Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Siti Namane Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Siti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvidesa Sunyavadi Bhaktachari Pracharine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvidesa Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nitya Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Hello and welcome everyone. I just want to introduce for a minute. This is my wife, Ananta Dasi. She's been married for an awful long time.
Don't say awful.
No, very long time, excuse me. Something very auspicious. Definitely a high auspicious point of my life when this happened. And she's been devotee now 45 years, initiated. And she has been involved in many different preaching projects that have been done. She's been in charge of the temple kitchen in Detroit and done various pujari services in ISKCON, different places. She's helped a lot with the Prabhupada Centennial and all our preaching in Tampa and Tallahassee. Without her, I wouldn't be able to do very much. And we have today our special guest, Mother Sukhada.
Kṛṣṇa.
She's been a devotee forever, I think. I don't know. For a long, much longer time.
75. And I was initiated 75 too.
And so she was also with my wife teaching at the Alachua Learning Center here, run by devotees, and later at the Bhaktivedanta Academy.
Earlier.
Later.
Well,
Okay,
she was later.
She went back there, yeah. So, and she is, of course, married for many years, has a husband, Pushkar Prabhu. Many of you know him for his paintings, and a wonderful daughter who was married and living close by. Mm-hmm. And she is a very senior preacher in ISKCON and very enthused about book distribution and Harinam, often participating here in Alachua, one of our backbone preachers here for many years. So I know I could go on, but I hope I don't overstep my bounds and take too much of your time. So we'll turn it to Shubha Balas and then back to them.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Ms. Grace Ramya Prabhu, for such a kind introduction. It is said that when the after millions and millions of births, one gets chance to meet devotees. So we are also blessed and fortunate to get chance to hear from such realized devotees who have been living and breathing and practically every cell of their body has been serving Prabhupada for last 45 plus years. So to hear from such self-realized souls is a great fortune. So I would request everyone to please turn on their audios and videos so we can properly welcome these wonderful daughters of Srila Prabhupada, and by loudly chanting 3 times, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Her Grace Ananta Mataji and Her Grace Sukhada Mataji for accepting this humble invitation after multiple requests. We are so blessed and honored to get chance to hear from both of you today about your journeys in Krishna consciousness and your experiences and exchanges with Srila Prabhupada and anything else you would like to share. We are all very, very eager to hear that. So thank you so much. You can please start.
So, you know, as a child, I had so many questions about God. I grew up Catholic. So I would ask, you know, questions about God. And I remember very clearly once my mother saying to me, we're standing in the hallway, and she said, you know, I knew about heaven and hell. She said, there's a big clock in hell, and it goes back and forth, and it says, you'll be in here forever. You'll never get out, not ever. And I was like, you know, just struck with fear. And so much so that I started to really question God himself. Like, how could he be so mean to do that? Really? And from there, I even thought, I don't know if I want to go to heaven. Number one, like, what do they do there? What goes on in heaven? I knew that church, you know, went to church every Sunday. And there's so many things I liked about the Catholic faith, but it was basically very boring. And I just thought, you know, I just didn't like the whole idea of it. And I had so many questions, so I would ask my mother questions, and she finally said, "Don't ask so many questions. Your aunt went crazy asking questions like that." So I stopped asking her questions like that, but I never stopped asking questions. So especially when I went to college and, taking so many philosophy courses, and then I, graduated from college. I became a teacher. But then I always felt like, what am I teaching? I really wanted to change the world. I really felt like the world was messed up, because just like now, at the time when I was growing up as a young adult, there was, race riots and the war in Vietnam and so many problems. And I really wanted to change things. But after teaching for a while, I realized that wasn't possible. And Mother Mukhya and her husband and my husband and I, we decided we would move to Colombia, that it would be a beautiful place to live. It would be simple living. So we did that, but found out that wherever you go, the material world is still happening. There's birth, death, disease, and old age, so many problems. So they had left. They went back to Michigan, and they greeted us at the airport when we came back, and they had been visiting the temple in Detroit. And so I also started to visit the temple in Detroit, and I was just amazed at how they had an answer for every question that I had. Every question, like reincarnation, for example, made so much. It made everything clear.
What year was that?
That was 1974. Yeah. So I was so impressed. I started reading Prabhupada's books, and again, every question. And when I walked into the Detroit Temple the first time, there was a picture there. Maybe you remember this picture. It showed that a corner of the painting was a spiritual world with cows and Kṛṣṇa and beauty. And then there was the material. There was the Earth planet. You could tell it was the Earth planet, and there was devotee kind of being propelled from the Earth planet right up to the spiritual world. So even that was significant for me, because I thought, well, they know where they're going, and who's that? And I learned all about the spiritual world. I learned about what they did in the spiritual world. So as far as I know, there's no other scripture that talks about what the spiritual world is like in such detail. The activities that go on, the gopis, the gopas, the cows, all the pastimes. So I was completely intrigued and could not wait to meet Prabhupada, because of course he's the one that brought all of this to us. So my husband and I, we moved to Miami because we wanted to get away from the winters. And very shortly after moving to Miami, we heard that Prabhupada was coming. So the second day that I had moved to the Miami temple, I decided that I wanted to go on Sankirtan with Nartaka Gopala. Maybe some of you know her. So they decided that Abhiram, who was the temple president, he said that he wanted myself and Nartaka, when Prabhupada came through to the airport, that we would be the ones that would offer flowers to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, and also rose water. So we're all at the airport, and we're waiting for him to come through the doors. And, it's a feverish pitch. We're all so excited, to see him. And I was excited and a little scared, because, I had to walk backwards, and I was hoping that everything would go smoothly, that I wouldn't trip or, throw too much water and he might slip, or, all this is going through my mind. But when the doors opened and Prabhupada emerged, it was such an amazing experience that I immediately realized that every experience in my life up until then had been somewhat of a disappointment. You know how you have these certain milestones in your life that are supposed to be a big deal, like, when you're 10 or when you turn 16, and, when you go to college, when you graduate from college, when you get married, all these things. And that they might have been good, but it was never what I thought it would be. And here I had no expectations for what it would be like to see Srila Prabhupada, but it was so much more than I had ever hoped for. You just felt all the beauty, all the grace, all the humility, all the love, all the compassion, so much so that everybody, all the devotees were completely overwhelmed, crying and with happiness. And even a lot of people at the airport were also, experiencing that. So we went back to the temple, and this is kind of a funny story that I'd forgotten about, but when we got to the temple, this devotee, Mahashringa, he was kind of a new devotee, and he thought it would be a good idea to put leaves all over the grass and make it soft for Prabhupada to walk on. So the first thing that Prabhupada says when he gets to the temple, it was probably about 5 or 6 acres with lots of banyan trees. So Prabhupada says, how come there's leaves all over the grass, He said, why can't we have nice manicured lawns like everybody else, So Mahashringa was really embarrassed, and he quickly, timely raked up all the leaves. So it was a wonderful time because every evening, Prabhupada would give class underneath the banyan trees. And it was such a mystical, experience. Like the weather was balmy and everything was so beautiful. And so he would give class. I remember one incident in particular where Prabhupada was talking about prasadam. And he was saying how you have all come to me because of prasadam. He said, even you, Abhiram. And we were like, oh, even Abhiram, the temple president, he came because of prasadam. So he was talking about the benefits, how purifying it was and how important it was. And then someone in the audience raised their hand and they said, Srila Prabhupada, is it true that if you take prasadam, you're guaranteed a human birth in your next life? And Prabhupada said, yes, that is true. And everybody went wild, Haribol, yay, yay. They were so excited, that we were all guaranteed a human birth. So when it calmed back down, Srila Prabhupada said, there are some species of monkeys that are considered human. So everybody was kind of like, okay, I guess we have a little more work to do, But it was just so nice that one day I was coming back from Sankirtan, and I forgot that where Prabhupada was staying at one of our guest houses. So they were like, somebody came, I said, Bhaktin Sandy, come in. So they dragged me in, and there was a window, and there was one head after the other. So I just put my head on the very top, and we were all watching Srila Prabhupada get a massage from Shuddhakirti. And that also was incredible because Prabhupada was so beautiful. He looked so youthful. His skin was like golden and effulgent. That was very clear. So that it was so wonderful that when Prabhupada did leave and moved on. Actually, some of you may know Tamahar Prabhu and his wife Mantrini, and then there was Chaturbahu and Murnalini. They were I was a Bhaktin and another Bhaktin, another Bhakta.
That means not initiated.
Right. We weren't initiated yet. Just Tamahar and Mantrini were. And we went on traveling Sankirtan, and they had arranged it so that we were kind of groupies. We kind of followed Srila Prabhupada from, distributed books in between, and then we would see Prabhupada at so many different places. We went to Washington, D.C., and Mantrini, who's an excellent cook, she had made lotus flower cookies and mango ice cream, homemade mango ice cream. And Srila Prabhupada, he just loved it, He was asking about it, she'd gotten fresh milk, and the mangoes were from the trees in Miami. There was so many mangoes growing from the trees in Miami, and so many avocados that we had to say that if the fruit touches the ground, it's considered offered. And I mean, Sunday feast, we would have, mango pakoras, mango sweet rice, mango chutney, you name it. It was mango, So, and then from Washington, D.C., we went to New Vrindavan, saw Prabhupada in New Vrindavan, and from there to Pennsylvania, and that's where I was initiated. And that was a very
What month?
I think it was October, September, October. I'm not totally sure what month it was. Yeah. And so it was so amazing. There were so many devotees from all over gathering there. And I remember, this is very silly, but, I was meditating on a name that I wanted. Actually my name was Radhakanta, I was kind of like meditating and thinking that somehow the Prabhupada would know my mind and give me that name. But when I went up to get my beads and your name is Sukhada, I felt like, wow, it's a great name. It means the giver of happiness, so I try to live up to that name. And it was so crowded, and I was so eager to be able to be closer to Srila Prabhupada that, when I came out of the temple, somebody stopped me and gave me a whole tray of cookies, and they said, bring these to Srila Prabhupada. So I made my way through all the men, because the temple was filled with men, and I gave the cookies to Srila Prabhupada, and he went, where are the children? Then all the children came in. I had to go back out, but I wanted to see Prabhupada closer. So there was no room in the temple, so I went on the porch, but even the porch was completely filled with people. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go out on the walkway, and I'll go to the end of the walkway, and then when he comes out, I'll just be able to see him, really close. So when Prabhupada got done giving class, he came down the walkway, and it started to rain, and I felt very foolish, because here I was, I picked a couple of flowers, and when Prabhupada came to the end of the walkway where I was, I gave him a flower, and I said, this is for you, Srila Prabhupada. And he was so kind. He said, thank you very much. And I said, thank you, Srila Prabhupada. He said, Jai. So seriously, for those few seconds that I was in his presence, I was in the spiritual world. You know what I mean? I can't forget any of those moments that I was able to connect with Srila Prabhupada like that. There, how there's one verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, somebody may know it, that there was a certain moment that when someone was able to see Kṛṣṇa, maybe it was Radharani, it decorated that moment, with flowers and garlands and sandalwood paste, So I felt that way. Those moments are just so embedded, in my memory. So now I'm initiated and very dedicated, to distributing Prabhupada's books. So we would, all day from morning to night, we would be out doing books. And often they were at the stoplights. So, places like Detroit and Chicago, all the busy cities, we were just like breathing. I'm amazed that I don't have lung cancer. Kṛṣṇa protected me, because we would just distribute these magazines all day long, and maybe like some days I would distribute 300 Back to Godhead magazines. So, also we saw Srila Prabhupada in New York, and when they had, this was latest 1976, I guess, there was a Rath Yatra in New York, and they flew the Sankirtan ladies up to see Srila Prabhupada. So when I got there, I was up all night, because I just said I was going to make mango ice cream and cookies for Srila Prabhupada too. So I did that. And then the next morning, everybody had gone to the site, to the Rath Yatra site, and I decided that, I said, well, where's Prabhupada? And they said, well, Prabhupada's still here, he's going to come later. So I thought, I'm just going to stay here, I'm going to wait till Srila Prabhupada comes out, So myself and another devotee, Dira, we got flowers, and we were just peddling the flowers, waiting for Prabhupada to come out. And generally when Prabhupada comes out of a building, there's a huge kirtan, and everybody's, but this time when he came out, it was just me and her. So I was so nervous, but I paid my obeisances. Actually, luckily, the other devotee, Dira, she has a picture of me paying my obeisances, and Srila Prabhupada's looking at me. So we have this big bag of flowers, and by the time I get up, Prabhupada's in the car, and I'm standing there with a bag of flowers. So we got into a taxi cab, and we somehow or other, New York is tough, but we managed to follow. And when Prabhupada got out of the car, we were just like, throwing flowers on him. And it was such an ecstatic Rath Yatra. I remember seeing Srila Prabhupada pay his obeisances on the concrete and thinking, wow, Prabhupada, generally when people are important and that they're unapproachable, just like you figure a celebrity, right? A famous person who's very well-known. It's hard to get close to them. But Prabhupada, he made himself so available to everybody. And here he is, the most humble, paying as a basis to the deities on the concrete. And then I was at Prabhupada's cart. Prabhupada was on Subhadra Devi's cart, and I pulled him, through the streets of New York. And there were so many people, and everyone was commenting what a wonderful festival it was. Even the police, they said, we've never seen such a peaceful parade, Prabhupada, there's just so much prasadam distributed, so much love distributed. And of course, that is what Prabhupada taught us, and that is the beautiful legacy that he's given us, that wherever devotees go, there's kirtan, there's book distribution, and there's prasadam. And the fact that so much prasadam is distributed, and there's so many books are distributed, and so much kirtan, it's like, who would have known that kirtan would become a common term? There's rabbi kirtan, there's so many different kinds of kirtan, but it's kirtan, and it's made people warm up to Krishna consciousness also, because it's become so popular. So one thing that we noticed was that as we're distributing, doing all this distributing books, that every time we distributed books with so much enthusiasm, the next time we saw Prabhupada, we felt like we could see him better. We felt like we understood more, that he empowered us more. So I thought that was interesting, because I think even now, as we, perform our austerities, of our chanting with love and with determination, that as we do that, we are able to understand Prabhupada more, and we are able, and Prabhupada does empower us more, and we're able to do more. Just like Arjuna, Nimitta Matram, Krishna says, just become an instrument. So we're all instruments of Srila Prabhupada, and consequently we're able to do so much for him. Like what time? How much time do I have? Because I want to give you enough time.
It's 9:34. You're good.
Okay, I'll just I have to continue this another time, because till 10:30. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit more. This is one incident that happened when we were distributing books in Montgomery, Alabama, and we're distributing Back to Godheads with a big picture of Kṛṣṇa on the front in the Deep South, so that isn't normally done. So what happened is one of the devotees, Chachabahu, he had gone to get lunch for us, and while he was gone, the police came and they arrested us. And so I'd never been arrested before. I was arrested several times after that, though, for doing Sankirtan. But by the time the devotee who was getting lunch came back, he didn't know what happened to us. And by the time he figured it out that we were in jail, we couldn't be bailed out, so we had to spend the night in jail. Tamahar Prabhu, and then myself and this Bhaktin. So nothing we could eat, we just had to tolerate and chant. And the next morning, they brought us into a little, it was a white room, had a little window at the top. Bhaktin, Murnalini, she started crying, but I just thought, okay, Krishna's got a plan here. We're just gonna we're gonna go with it. So they took us and brought us in front of the judge. And the judge, each one of us, he asked us, what did you do before you did this? So I explained, before I did this, I went to college, I was a teacher, I wanted to change the world, and how I felt the best way to change the world had to come from being spiritual, and how this movement was meant to distribute love of God, and it was non-sectarian. And so he heard each one of us give our reasons for what we were doing. And he said, at the end of it, he said, I'm really sorry that you were arrested. He said, and I want you to know if you have any trouble along the way, he gave us his card. He said, you let me know and I'll help you. So that was pretty amazing. So we went back to our mobile home that we were traveling in, and Montrini had made a huge feast for us. She's like an incredible cook. So, and we hadn't eaten for a long time. So we sat down to eat this wonderful feast, and there's a knock at the door. And we open the door, and it's the judge and the bailiff. So we invited them in. They sat down. They had prasadam. Krishna is so kind that because this judge was so kind, he immediately rewarded him with prasadam. And then he gave a donation, he gave $10, which was more then than it is now. And we gave a Bhagavad Gita. So, that made me see then and now that, you never know, like sometimes life is so difficult and it takes hindsight, you look back and you go, okay, now I understand that Kṛṣṇa did this because of that. And this happened, that Kṛṣṇa has a perfect plan for each of us, and if we can just understand that even when times are difficult, that it really carries us through, that, of course, one thing I realized too, that I think it's so important that, okay, because I have these personal memories with Srila Prabhupada, and sometimes people feel, wow, I wish I could have been there. I wish I could have done that. But this is to my knowledge, this is the first time in history that the Hare Krishna movement has so many primary sources. Generally, historically speaking, there's mainly secondary sources, meaning, someone heard from somebody else and they wrote it down, just like with the Bible. It's been written, but it's also been passed down of word of mouth. And so, how does it get changed? How does it get altered over those times? But we have so many videos of Srila Prabhupada speaking directly, so many tapes, where Prabhupada is speaking directly. The books that he's written, so many books that he's written, and also so many biographies. So many Prabhupada disciples have written first-hand accounts of their interactions with Srila Prabhupada. So by reading these books, by seeing these videos and hearing these lecture tapes, you are having exactly really the same experience. That Vani experience. Yeah, that's right, Vani. So it's so important to just absorb it all and realize that there's so many of you have surpassed what we have done in your preaching, and that's because Prabhupada is empowering you in every way. So hearing these experiences are ecstatic, and seeing you all carry the mission on is the most ecstatic, because actually there was one devotee, and his name was Parma Karuna. You may know him. He's practicing law here now with his family moved here, Amarendra's son. And he said when he was in college that he took a religion class, and he was totally in Maya, just a second generation, and he'd been brought up as a devotee, but he took the world religion class. So in the world religion class, he heard that sometimes they call them new religions, that they're lost because, the second generations, they won't take it up, and so they just kind of dies out. He said when he heard that, he was like, oh my God. Because he actually really liked everything about being a devotee, but maybe not all the regular principles, but he got scared, like maybe this could happen to our Hare Krishna movement. So he changed his life, he started following the principles. He became a strict devotee. He was a brahmachari for many years. He went distributing books. So it's so important that, what we have and what we feel is invested in you. And I just wrote one poem. Should I read it?
Yes.
Okay, this is a poem I wrote a while ago for Prabhupada's Vyasa Puj. So I hope I won't cry, because sometimes it just really gets me. But dying, sighing, everyone's crying. A world full of strife. Oh, what a life. On our way straight to hell, no way to quell these sinful desires. Nothing good's in store with Kali Yuga's roar. We're washed up on the shore. This was before you entered, Srila Prabhupada. You came to ignite a desire for what's right. Divine personality to love descends Kṛṣṇa from above to dance on our tongues. Such a beauty unsung, causing our hearts to swell. Put us under your spell. Who would have thought these rhinoceroses you caught and patiently taught? You fed us. You bathed our hearts clean. You created a scene of eternity. We met those you hold dear and paved the way clear. We may stumble, we do. It's impossible without you. Your love keeps us true. Your love is the glue. that keeps us together always. Please bless us today that together we stay fixed on the goal, saving every single soul. By your mercy alone, we have already shown you're still here with us. You're here in your words that echo everywhere. You're here in the hearts of those who dare to fight, to give everyone the chance to escape the plight of a world with no light. We know that we'll win because supreme love conquers sin. Like you said, it's just time that separates us. Chanting, dancing, feasting, we're already there. You've made us the heir to your fortune. There, I did it without crying. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Goodness.
Thank you, Mother Sukhada. We're so fortunate to have been able to share.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It looks like, Prabhuji, the background has been turned on, which is leading to some disruption in the video. Can you please turn off your background?
Oh.
California, I guess.
That background down. Remember the Golden Gate Bridge?
Yeah. Well, that's.
I still didn't get to talk about Prabhupada, traveling secretary.
Okay, you can put a little bit at the end because you're such a good speaker. Are you turning off your background?
I don't know. He's telling me I have to, so I don't know.
No, if we just sit close, then you don't see the background.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Stare right into the screen. I wonder how that works.
If you share your screen, I can help you navigate.
Yeah, I could do that, couldn't I?
There is a green button on the bottom, Prabhuji, which says share screen.
I'm looking. Where is this? I'm not super good at all this. Come on, wake up. There we go. Okay, now we go. No, this is not it. Okay. There we go. Share screen. Okay. There we go. Share. Okay. So there is a shared. All right.
Yes, sure. Can you please go to your app, your Zoom app? Not the website, the Zoom app. Do you have the Zoom app?
Yeah, you do. I mean, that's what we were talking on, right?
Isn't it just if I'm close by, then they can't see that anyways?
Entertainment. This one? Is that what you wanted to see?
You'll have to open your Zoom app, Prabhuji.
I got a feeling this is not going to happen.
Okay, so click on the top, just below my picture, you see a green icon.
I do see.
Yeah, a green checkbox. So if you click on there.
New share. New share? Yeah, and then what?
And then you do the backgrounds and filters. And then click on none.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm in the right spot.
So in the top right, when you open the Zoom app, you'll see a right, like a checkbox with a check. The symbol.
The check.
The check, yeah. And if you click on there, you'll see backgrounds and filters. You just click on none.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm in the right spot. Am I in the right spot? Can you see?
Actually, the screen you are sharing, you'll have to do that again because I think you're sharing just one frame. So I would like to see the whole screen, so cancel your screen sharing and try again so I can see where you are. Right now I don't see, I just see the web browser, Google Chrome.
Prabhuji, actually, you can share your screen and show Prabhuji how to do it. That way, Prabhuji can easily navigate.
Shall I do that, Prabhuji?
Whatever you think is going to make it work.
Okay. Okay, I'm sharing my screen now.
Yeah.
So you have to open your app.
App. The green one on the top?
Correct.
Well, I already did that. It didn't get me anywhere.
Prabhu, turning the video off and turning it on again. Did you try that?
How's that?
I think that helped.
Oh, you figured it out.
Yeah, now it's working.
Wow.
No, it's not.
Expert. Okay.
Haribol.
Now, Ananta, my dear wife, is going to speak to you and give you her ecstatic experiences. Thank you. Make sure that screen has got you right. And maybe adjust it a little.
Okay, we're good.
Well, you
Hare
want to
Krishna.
cut off the top of your head.
Yes. Hare Krishna. I don't have such ecstatic experiences as Mother Sukhada, but
Yes, you do.
how do you know? But I'll talk a little bit. I joined in 1974 also in.
Mataji, just 1 minute. Prabhuji, you are spotlighted, not Mataji. Shubhalat Prabhuji is spotlighted.
It's a Shiva Vilas.
There I am.
Yeah, no. Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah, 'cause he's
Did you see yourself the whole time?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, you-
So yeah, I was initiated. Oh, okay. So I joined in the Ann Arbor Temple, which is just an hour away from Detroit in Michigan. That's where the University of Michigan is. And I moved into it. The temple was very small. It was just 3-bedroom house that Leka Shivanti had donated. So I was there for 6 months, and a lot of my friends who lived at the Detroit temple had been initiated.
No, they just background.
And sorry, I lost my train of thought. So at that time, if you would live in the temple, and in the temple you would be there with all the other devotees, and you would do devotional service all day long. You would go to the morning program. So it wasn't like now where everybody lives in their separate houses and they have their own jobs. And can you put it so I don't have to see myself? It's really distracting. So that's better, thank you. And so,
Go ahead.
yeah, I'm trying to remember where it was. I get distracted. Okay.
You moved in.
So I moved in the temple, and everybody, followed the whole morning program. We would chant our rounds together, and we would do service all day long. So your temple president would tell Prabhupada when you were ready to get initiated if you had done everything properly for 6 months. That was the standard then. I had a lot of friends in Detroit and at the Detroit temple, and I would see some of them had joined before me, so they were all getting initiated, and I hadn't been initiated yet. And I thought, well, gosh, when am I going to get initiated? So our temple president, Bhadri Narayan, who is now a sannyasi, said to me one time, okay, well, I think you're ready for initiation. What would you like to do? Would you like to be initiated by Prabhupada directly, or would you like to be initiated through a letter? Because in those days, Prabhupada was traveling all over the world, and he wasn't always at your temple or a place where you could go to other temples and get initiated. I thought, well, I want to get initiated right away because all my friends are initiated, and everybody's going to think I'm in Maya because I've been a devotee 8 months and I haven't been initiated yet. So I said, okay, well, we'll just write a letter. So I wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada, and I was very nervous about it. We had the little typewriters in those days, and I would have to make a mistake and blank it out and go back and change it again. And so the letter was sent off. Meanwhile, we found out that after the letter had been sent out, we found out that Prabhupada was going to be in Chicago for Rath Yatra and that was be in a few months. So that was actually in July 1975. So we all went to Chicago, which is only like a 5-hour drive for us. The whole temple was very small, only 6 or 10 devotees. So we just locked up the temple and just drove to Chicago and got to see Prabhupada in Chicago. I have this book that Sasrupa wrote many books about Prabhupada. And this is one of them where he talks about Prabhupada arriving in Chicago. And I thought it was a little interesting, so I thought I would give you a little background information on that. So it says here that he went from Denver to Chicago. And when he was in the airplane, he scanned a magazine called Time Magazine. And the title of it was Crime, Why, and What to Do. So landing at the airport in O'Hare, he had an interview with a reporter there, and he started talking about how the Hare Krishnas could solve the problem of crime. And he said, "Why are you visiting Chicago?" said the reporter. He said, "Just now I have seen one article in Time Magazine." He raised his right hand in an instructing gesture and leaned against the cane. Crime, why, and how to solve it. If you are serious, you can take our methods and suggestions. Then you can stop this crime. You have a way to stop crime? Oh, yes, I have. Can you explain a little bit about what you do, how you do that? That we have to suggest. The social, political, educational, cultural, everything has to be changed. So if you come, we can give you some details on how to do this. So that was his continuing presentation. He met with the mayor of the city, and he told the mayor in the city that he was, the temple was in Evanston, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And there was a building just across the street from the temple, and it was empty, and he had found out about that. So he said, "We can solve this problem of crime." A very suitable headlines in that magazine. Prabhupada continued to develop the analysis of crime. As long as society violates the laws of nature, he said, there will be crime. He thought it's significant, and according to the Time article, the leaders of the country were actually wondering what to do about the increasing rate of crime. All the problems could be solved by Kṛṣṇa consciousness, Prabhupada said. So at that point, he had found out that the building across the street was actually empty and owned by the city. And so Prabhupada asked, oh, that's down here. Prabhupada said the remedy is to train first-class men. He told the mayor briefly about the Vedic Society's 4 natural divisions and said the only hope was to train some first-class and second-class men. We certainly need a new approach, admitted the mayor, because we're not successful now. So Prabhupada suggested that they donate that building to ISKCON so that they could have a big preaching center there. And the mayor was like, he said, this is most important. City service is going on, but criminals are increasing. Why not give us a little opportunity? The mayor explained politely he would have to talk to the city manager and excusing himself from committing to donate that building. Also, the public relations representative of the Chicago Police Department came, and he also talked to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, unless you have a clean heart, you cannot stop criminality simply by laws. The laws are already known by the thief and murderer, but still they commit because the heart is unclean, and our process is to cleanse the heart. A difficult task, sir, said the lieutenant of the police, and Prabhupada replied, it wasn't difficult. He was already doing it on a small scale, but we need to do it on a big scale. So in this way, he was meeting very important people at that time. Also in Chicago, Tamal Krishna Maharaj had his bus that he was taking around all around the country, distributing books and making devotees. And Tamal Krishna had previously been in India, and when he decided to come to America and preach, he wanted to show Prabhupada he had actually done something important. So he had 75 brahmacharis to be initiated by Prabhupada at that time in Chicago. And when they came up to Prabhupada, each of them gave a rose to Srila Prabhupada. So, but Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he was a very staunch sannyasi, and he didn't want any ladies initiated with his 75 brahmacharis. So myself and a few other people had to be initiated the next day. So I was up for initiation. Bhajan was cooking the Sunday feast, so he didn't hear the call when the temple president there in Chicago said, anybody who's coming to be initiated, give me the names so we can set out the place for them. So they have a big fire sacrifice, and the initiants are all around. Everybody has a paper plate with a banana on it and some beads. But Bhajan didn't hear that announcement, so he didn't know he was supposed to do that. So when everybody was sitting down, I came up also, and they said, oh, who are you? You're supposed to be initiated? Oh, we didn't know. So they quickly got a paper plate and a banana and some neck beads, and I sat down with the ceremony also. And each individual person would be called up and talk to Prabhupada and give Prabhupada would give them some beads and give them the name. So when they got to me, Prabhupada was actually in a really hurry too, because that was the next day. It was July 11th, and he was supposed to go to Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, he was going to be at the Rath Yatra there. So he was never actually in the Chicago Rath Yatra when I was there. But anyways, so when they come up to call me up to be in front of Srila Prabhupada, they didn't have any beads for me either, because Prabhupada had chanted on everyone's beads, and then Prabhupada would give you those beads after you told him you were going to follow the 4 regular principles and chant 16 rounds. So they didn't have any beads for me. And Prabhupada looks at me and says, where are your beads? And I'm like, I didn't know any of this background knowledge. I didn't know that Bhajan hadn't set up for me. They didn't have any beads. They didn't have anything. So he turned to one devotee who was nearby, said, go get her some beads. So they went to the temple store and got some beads, and then they said, because Prabhupada was in a hurry and had to make the airplane, they said, okay, you go over here. We'll go through other people. We'll come back to you. So I obediently just went over on the side and waited till everybody else had gone through. And he comes up to me, comes back to me, and I'm just this little brahmacharini. I don't know anything, just a little just insignificant person. Anyways, he comes up and he comes to me and he asked me if I'm going to follow the regular principles and chant 16 rounds, and he hands me these beads and he says, your name is Ananta. And he said it so quiet and so gravely. I'm like, I'm not sure what he said, but okay. And I offered my obeisances and went to sit down. I had a lot of young, I was only 21 at the time. And I had a lot of young friends who told me, oh, when you get initiated, you feel so light. I felt all my karma was disappearing. And I felt like I could just float in the air. And I sat down at my place at the fire yagya and thought, I don't feel anything. I must be in Maya. Already I'm in Maya. So anyways, after that, I had to ask another devotee, what did she say my name was? So like that, I got initiated by Srila Prabhupada. And I was really disappointed that he just flew off to Philadelphia, didn't stay for our Rath Yatra there. But what happened a few months later is that I got a letter. Well, I didn't actually get a letter. Bhajan got a letter when we were back in Ann Arbor, and Srila Prabhupada had finally answered my letter for initiation. And I was always told, if you write a letter to Srila Prabhupada, he'll write one back. But he didn't write me a letter. He wrote Bhajan a letter. And in it, there's one line that says, Pam Congress wants to get initiated. Her name will be Padmahasta. So I'm probably the only person in ISKCON who has 2 names from Srila Prabhupada. So I have Ananta that I got at the initiation time, and Padmahasta that came in a letter, which came in September. So I had been initiated quite a while by then, and I was confused, which name do I use? And I had been called Ananta for a while, so we just went with that. But there's another story behind all that, because when I was young, I was 5 years old, I was actually adopted. I had a previous name, and my previous name was Alice. And when I got adopted, my name became Pamela. Now, generally in those days, you got an initiated name with the first letter of your non-devotee name. So Mother Sukhada used to be Sandra, right. So now she's Sukhada. And of course, everybody speculates what your name's going to be. But anyways, so my first name when I was born was Alice, which is the same as Ananta, which was I was initiated first by. And the second name, Pamela, was Padmahasta. Those also start with P. So in that way, somehow or other, I have 2 names from Srila Prabhupada. interestingly enough. So when we were in Chicago, Prabhupada was giving class every day, and he would give a class based on what he had been translating, because he translated everywhere he went. He took his tape recorders, or his servants did, took all the things to dictaphone and all to translate. And so at that time, when he was in Chicago, he was talking about Ajamil and about how Ajamil was saved from going to hell because he was chanting the holy name. He was chanting Narayan, his son's name. So at that time, when Prabhupada was lecturing in front of 200 devotees, all packed into the Evanston temple, he started going through all the qualities of a pure devotee. He's kind, he's tolerant, he's whatever. And I was thinking in myself, amongst hundreds of devotees, it's hopeless. It's completely hopeless. I'll never have these kind of qualities, completely hopeless. And Prabhupada said right there in the lecture, there is no such thing as hopelessness, as long as one always associates devotees. So I took that as my personal instruction that I should always associate with devotees. And he also started explaining at that time about sat and asat, people who were interested in eternal life and people who are interested in material life, and how we should always stay with spiritual people who are interested in spiritual life. So after that, actually just a few months after that, Prabhupada went to Detroit, and all us Ann Arbor devotees, we were only an hour from Detroit. So we would all gather over there for various occasions and just shut our little temple down, which just had a picture of the Panchatattva for deities. So we just would put them to sleep and go to Detroit. So we were there to help the devotees get ready for Prabhupada to come in Detroit. And there's, the night before he came, I actually helped sew up a curtain. I actually did the whole curtain by myself that was going to go behind Prabhupada's Vyasasan. It's a green curtain, and it had a lace curtain on top of it. It was to hide a window to make sure Prabhupada could sit nicely at that spot. And there's a Chaitanya Charitamrita, the older set, that has a picture of Prabhupada on his Vyasasan with that curtain behind that I sewed. Let's see also. So at that time, that's when Prabhupada decided to get a good, beautiful temple for Detroit. And that became the Fisher Mansion. At that time, he negotiated very carefully with the realtor and with the owner to get the property, which cost $2 million to build in the 1930s. And each room, Prabhupada said, is worth how much they paid for it. So I was living in Detroit during that time, although I wasn't part of any of that pastimes going on, but that's all in that book, Leela Rita. And then he came 1 year later with the opening of the temple in the Fisher Mansion Temple, which Prabhupada called Devasadan Mandir. Devasadan means abode of the demigods. And so that was the name he gave to this 2.5 acre, big, huge, beautiful building, which is still being maintained by the devotees. So I got to see him at that time and listen to his lectures. I got to clean his rooms a few times because Prabhupada would go for a morning walk, and the ladies were not allowed to go unless you were Vishaka who could take pictures. So we would stay behind and clean Prabhupada's room for when he came back. One time also when he would have his breakfast. He actually stayed at someone else's house during that time. Well, no, that must have been before. That must have been at the old temple. So we're back to 75. Yeah, when he was in the Fisher Mansion, he stayed in his own room, which is beautiful with real gold faucets in the bathroom and all kinds of amazing things. But when before they bought the building, he was staying at a householder's house right near the temple there. And the day he was going to go back to the airport and fly on to his next place, one devotee captured me and said, "Hey, can you help with Prabhupada's breakfast?" So we went into the back of this householder's house, and there was a little kitchen there, and we were put all the sweets on his plates and all the fruit that was on his plate, and serve it to Prabhupada. And Brahmananda, he was there too, and he was always a big, important sannyasi and, very determined in what he wanted. So in order to get to the kitchen, you had to go through the dining room where Prabhupada was sitting. So he told us when Prabhupada was there sitting and eating his breakfast of the plate that we had prepared, he told us, no, you can't go out. You just have to stay here till Prabhupada leaves. You can't go in front of Prabhupada. You go in the next room. So I never got really close to Prabhupada in that way, like physically sitting next to him or seeing very much of him. There was actually a guard at Prabhupada's door when he lived at the temple, so you couldn't just walk in as you could if you were earlier days. But anyway, so we made Prabhupada's plate up, and Prabhupada was going to the airport. And so everybody rushed off to take Prabhupada to the airport. And what's left in the dining room table is huge plate of prasadam from Prabhupada's plate, because he didn't eat very much. He was traveling and breakfast was pretty light. So we got to take care of all the Mahaprasadam from Srila Prabhupada. In those days, generally the temple president would go over and just took the whole plate and you never saw anything. And that was like, well, we're not important enough to get any Mahaprasadam, but we had a huge plate, which was really nice. Unfortunately, there was one thing that I wasn't very up on at that time. I was initiated devotee, and my friend who was helping me, she wasn't initiated, so she knew even less than I did. And on it, Prabhupada had cut oranges, and he had just put them in his mouth and just sucked out the juice and left the rest behind. And when we were taking care of the plate, and I was making all these little plates for all my friends so they all could have Mahaprasadam, there was the oranges that he had left behind, and I looked at her and she looked at me, and we didn't know what to do with it. We should have just eaten the rest of the orange, but we just threw them in the garbage, which is terrible. But anyways, we did get a lot of Mahaprasadam. And because of that, I actually missed my ride. Ann Arbor is the airport is in between Detroit and Ann Arbor. So all my devotee friends that was in the Ann Arbor temple were supposed to go back in the van to Ann Arbor after Prabhupada went to the airport. So they all were with Prabhupada at the airport. And he has a picture of him at the airport with Prabhupada. I missed that. I was back there taking care of his plate. And all my associates at the temple, they drove on from there back to Ann Arbor. So I was actually stuck in Detroit for a few more days till they decided to get me. But that was okay because I was with friends. I don't know what else to say. I didn't really have a lot of association with Srila Prabhupada. But we did every day, not every day, every 2 or 3 days, you would get a tape in the mail and you could hear what Prabhupada had said, and everybody knew where he was and what he was doing. He met with this Catholic priest or that important official. And so we could always knew where Prabhupada was. That's about all I have to say. You have a little bit more, then you can finish up. You said you have one more.
Let's see if they have any questions.
Yeah, okay, open for questions.
Just any questions, discussion? Anybody has?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I have
See, that's us.
for each of you. So, Ananta Mataji, the Prabhupada knew your name Alice before he giving you first Diksha?
Not that I know of.
Very bold. So he's a probably spiritual person. He knew
Well,
that.
Prabhupada could read people's minds. He really could. I had a friend, Shintamani. She's an old Prabhupada disciple too. And she said that one time she was standing in the line, Prabhupada was walking down the line, and there were devotees on both sides. And she was thinking, okay, I have to be very pure. And her mind just started going crazy, thinking about all these nonsense things. Prabhupada walked by and just turned to her and said, that's okay. That's just your mind. Don't worry about it. So yeah, Prabhupada knew what you were thinking.
Yeah, we had an experience too. We had flown from Miami to India, and then we got to Mayapur. Temple president was there to greet us, Abhiram. And he said, would you like to see Prabhupada? And we're like, yes, So we were so tired though, we could barely stay awake. It'd been such a long journey. But when we got to Prabhupada's room, we were paying our obeisances, and our Taka Gopal told me she was thinking, we are with Prabhupada, but does he really want us to be here, So she kind of turned her head and looked up at him, and he looked at her and he nodded his head like, yeah, we want you to be here. So yeah, so many devotees have had that experience at Prabhupada. He knows what you're thinking, and he knows what you're going through too. There's a wonderful story. I forget where this was, but where devotee woman. Prabhupada was coming the next day, and Tulsi didn't have a skirt. So this woman, she made a Tulsi skirt. She sewed it as nicely as she could, but it didn't look very nice. So when she brought it in, some of the women said, "Oh my God, this is terrible." You know what I mean? Like, and she was crying, and the husband felt terrible, but they left the skirt on because they had nothing else. So the next day when Prabhupada came and he gave class, and then he turned, he looked at he goes, "Who has made this Tulsi skirt? This is such a nice Tulsi skirt." So that's so important to remember, that what Prabhupada was accepting was the love and devotion. You could hire a professional seamstress, you could come up with something miraculous, but doesn't have your love and devotion, then Prabhupada wouldn't be interested, Kṛṣṇa wouldn't be interested. That's what we're learning. That's what we've taken away from Kṛṣṇa and Prabhupada, is our love and devotion. So, Prabhupada could definitely read minds. And he definitely knows. Actually, once, we always hear that Kṛṣṇa won't give us more than we can handle. So somebody asked Prabhupada, they said, "Prabhupada, is that true, that Kṛṣṇa won't give you more than you can handle?" And Prabhupada said, "Yes, nor less." So he's always keeping us kind of on the edge, because he wants us to come back home, back to God as quickly as possible. So he's giving as much as we can handle, so we can become purified and go back to the spiritual world. Any other points?
Mataji, one point to you. So Mataji, you came to Krishna consciousness because you wanted to change the world.
Me
So
too.
after
We
Mataji,
thought,
after 45 years of practicing Krishna consciousness and self-realized, so what do you think at this point about changing the world? Can you enlighten?
Yeah, well, she can add whatever she'd like to add too. But to me, when I became a devotee, being a vegetarian was very, very strange. You know what I mean? It was just like, there were very few vegetarians. Now, and I own all the Srila Prabhupada's books. Every airplane has vegetarian options. Practically every restaurant has vegan vegetarian options. That's one symptom of changing the world. Also, kirtan has become, a household word, and also yoga. So even though so much of the yoga is mundane, it's opened people's minds to yoga and opened people's minds to Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada knew what he was doing. He had a plan. He had Krishna's plan. And also, I went to college to become a teacher. But after being a teacher for like 2.5 years, I thought, I'm not going to do this anymore, because one of the reasons I didn't want to do it is I looked at the older teachers, and I thought, wow, this is what happens to people after they've been teaching for so many years. They looked so frustrated and unhappy, so I thought, this is not me, this is not what I want to do. So, I became a devotee, and I distributed books for like 15 years. When my son I was living in Hawaii. I distributed books in Hawaii for 10 or 11 years, Miami for 5 years. My son became 11. I thought, Hawaii is not a good place to bring up a child. The atmosphere is so saturated with sense gratification. And I was worried that he was going to get killed surfing, because he already started to surf. And we used to distribute prasadam at these tourist spots, We would distribute so much prasadam that we made friends with the bus drivers, and they'd bring a whole bus of people. And the people would line up, and we were making carob chip cookies, and we had drinks. So everybody would take, okay, I'll take two bags of cookies and 4 drinks. And, all day long, we just had people coming through. And it was right next to this called Sandy Beach, which is a very dangerous beach that when you surf, the waves could take you and twist you, and people would break their neck, hurt their back. So there's always ambulances. And my son was starting to go to that beach. So I thought, okay, this is not going to work. So I wrote to Akuti and Mother Lakshmi Moni about the school, and we moved, my husband and I moved because of the school. And I was staying
to Alachua?
Yeah, here to Alachua, yeah. And I was staying with Brahmatirtha and Bhakti. And Bhakti, she was teaching school, but she got sick. She said, oh my God, I'm so sick. I can't teach. I don't know what to do. I said, well, I have a teaching degree. I said, I'm sure I can do it. I can sub for you, you know? So I went in there, and then I was like, wow, teaching devotee kids is so different than teaching non-devotees. So I really loved it. Bhakti decided she didn't want to teach anymore. So that began my 27-year teaching devotees. You know, I taught at the Gurukul for 10 years, and then helped us the charter school where I worked for 14 years. Then I went back to the Gurukul and taught for another few years. So, and the amazing thing is that, like at the charter school, right, they serve prasadam breakfast and lunch for those children. So I have run into so many students over the years. Like once I was coming into Publix, and one of my students was coming out. And
So just to let everybody know, the temple started a charter school, which was a public school, totally run by devotees and paid for by the government. It's still here in Alachua.
Mostly attended by devotees.
Yeah, now it's probably
60%.
Yeah. So anyway, one of my students was coming out of Publix, and she goes, Mother Sukhada, you look the same, you know? And she said, you know, when I left ALC, Alachua Learning Center, it's the name of the school, she said, and went to Santa Fe, they had such terrible lunches. She said, I couldn't eat them because, you know, our cooks would make like homemade bread and homemade, everything homemade, you know, where generally, I don't like to think about what they serve at a regular school. She said, I had to become a vegetarian. So she became vegetarian just like that. And I know actually one devotee, Logan.
I've seen Logan lately.
He actually became an issue with the Gandhi Math.
Oh.
Yeah, I think his name was Loka something.
Okay.
And another time I was getting
Lalit Kṛṣṇa Das. Lalit Kṛṣṇa Das.
Is that Nandini Kishore?
Yeah.
Yes. Haiva.
So,
Oh, hi.
Dandavad.
Okay, yeah. So the long-term benefits of all the book distribution, of all the kirtan, of all the, you know, prasadam, festivals, it's like we have no idea. Like this has just begun to sprout, you know? It's just begun. And as times get harder, and they're definitely getting harder, people more and more, they need shelter. You know, they need some shelter. So, and the devotees are there to give it. I mean, I heard Prabhupada said, you know, there should be so many farms because at some point people are going to want to come and take shelter.
By the hundreds. Then by the thousands.
Right. So we have a lot of work to do. I know in Alachua, you know, we have an eco farm that Mother Kuti has really made her project, and learning how to grow so many different kinds of food. And, you know, Prabhupada said we should all become self-sufficient, know how to grow our own food, because if all of a sudden things happen and we can't go to the store, then what are you going to do? I mean, preaching still has to go in the cities, but there has to be a place, there has to be enough farm communities that devotees can go to when things shut down. Yeah, because once Gokula Ranjana said that he was on a walk with Prabhupada, and they were looking over the Atlanta skyline, and Prabhupada, he said, this will all be gone, you know? So we don't really know. We've seen a lot in our lifetimes, right? Like with 9/11 and this pandemic and all the politics that's going on and all the protests and all the fires and the floods and the wars, right?
Hurricanes.
So, yeah, there's so much we can do. So yes, I do feel like my little part has changed the world, you know? And you can also feel confident that your little parts, because Prabhupada said every time we chant Hare Krishna, it goes out around the world like so many times, purifying everything in its path. So just he said one time, if it wasn't for the devotees, there would be no greenery left on the planet, you know? So think about that. It's like what we do, it's incalculable. The benefit that it has. So Prabhupada started it, we're continuing it, and you'll continue it, and your children will continue it, and this is the golden age, right? I mean, hard to believe, right? In a way.
Starting.
Yeah, it's starting. Like 500 some years into it, goes on for 10,000 years, which it doesn't mean the demons are going to disappear. Prabhupada said things would polarize. That the demons would really get together. The devotees would really get together. So it's an opportunity for people to be able to take shelter. But then after this 10,000 years, then it could be really.
You don't want to be here.
Yeah, you don't want to be here, exactly.
Srila Prabhupada said, history will show how this ISKCON movement saved the world in its most dangerous time. Darkest hour.
I love that. It's a beautiful quote. Thank you for that, Ananta. Really, really.
Yes, and we can see even just now, I saw the report that 28,000 Bhagavatams that were distributed for Bhadra Purnima. I mean, that's an incredible number.
Yeah.
Full sets of Bhagavatams. Prabhupada said this is Kṛṣṇa being installed in 28,000 locations.
Yeah, because these books, they're like deities. And there's so many stories. Like, I know one story where a woman got a book at the airport, and she brought it home with her, never read it, just stuck it up on her shelf. Prabhupada said, even if you take the book, you put it on your shelf, it will purify the whole house. So, some 7-8 years later, she was sitting on the chair, being bummed out, and she looked up, she saw the book, she took it down, she read it, she went right to the temple, became a devotee. And there's another fabulous story where a devotee is in Spain, and they would go onto the buses and make an announcement and distribute books. So she made an announcement, and this one man said, "Come over here, can I see your book?" And she gave him the book, and this man proceeded to tear the book apart, throw it on the floor. He stomped on it, and he pushed the devotee girl off the bus. I mean, she was just devastated. So he put the book, he didn't want to litter the bus, he put the book in his bag, and he brought it home, and his maid found it, and she glued it back together and put it on the shelf. So time goes by, life happens, his wife dies, he's got cancer. He also looks up at the bookshelf, he sees this book there, and he takes it down, he reads it, and he's like, oh my God. Oh my God. And what have I done? I didn't know, I didn't appreciate it, and I threw the devotee off the book. So he became a devotee, and all he wanted to do is find this woman who distributed the book and apologizes to her, which ultimately he's able to do. And even books that, they just get thrown away. I distributed books in the Miami airport and the Hawaii airport for 15 years altogether. And sometimes people would find the books in the garbage and become devotees from, reading books that they found on the garbage. And even in Hawaii once, they had announcements running. The announcement said, let's see, how did it go? There are people in the airport distributing flowers and literature. They are not authorized by the airport or the state of Hawaii. Mahalo, that means thank you. And they just repeatedly did that announcement, all through the day. So devotees are very, very innovative. I thought, people probably hardly listen to it. So I go up to people and say, did you hear the announcement about us? And practically everybody go, yeah. I said, well, that's us, and here's our books. And only once in a great while, somebody would say, yeah, I heard the announcement, I don't want any books. But most people would be like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll take some books. And one woman came up, Narada, and do you know Narada and Shirag? Did you ever know that? Yeah, well, Narada came.
Neighbors in Dallas.
Okay, yeah. So Narada came up, and she said, so I heard the announcement about you guys. What's up? So it was Thanksgiving Day. So I told her, who we were, and we brought her back to the temple with us. She came out with us to Waikiki, where we have a Thanksgiving celebration and kirtan and all that. And she never left. She stayed at the temple until she got married. I think her and her husband ended up moving to Dallas. Yeah.
They went to Mayapur later.
Yeah. So you just never know what's going to happen on book distribution. Even recently, I met I was going to the springs. I love to swim, so I was going to Blue Springs, and I was talking to this woman who was at the gate, and she said, oh yeah, I used to come to the temple. She said, isn't today Prabhupada's appearance day? And I was just like, because I went at the end of the day, and I was like flabbergasted. I said, yeah, how do you know? She said, I read your newsletter every week, she said, from start to finish. She said, I wish Parks and Rec had a newsletter that was good as yours, So then I brought her, when it was Radharani's appearance day, I brought her 2 big plates of prasadam. And so, there's people all over who've had maybe a little contact with the movement, and are just waiting for the right time. And it's like, it's bhakti, just you plant the seed, and like any seed has to be watered, but it grows, and people, we're planting the seeds. Prabhupada planted so many seeds, we're planting so many seeds, so we're definitely changing the world.
Very nice. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Quite a few other devotees also have hand raised, so let's see how many we can cover.
Okay.
Sound like you're not on a fixed schedule.
Yes, Sudhir Prabhu.
Sudhir?
Hare Krishna Mataji's Dandot Pranams. Yeah, very nice, realizations. When you're telling, we can feel, what's going on. Mataji, so one question I had, like you said, when there was a temple at Detroit, Prabhupada named it like something demigods you mentioned, so I did not understand that.
Devasiddhan means abode of the demigods. So all the devotees are like demigods.
Ah, okay. Thank you, Mataji.
I hope that actually devotees are much better than demigods, not to make us puffed up.
Is it like
That means you are also a demigod, better than demigod.
Because the thing is, the demigods, they're
Powerful.
well, they're very powerful, and they have a lot of material desires, not that we don't have some as well, but we're trying to purify ourselves of material desires.
Thank you. SK, is that Sri Kumar Prabhu? Is SK? You want to go ahead?
Yes, Prabhuji. Okay, thank you so much. So thank you for all 3 of you. Really, very blessed to have the audience of Srila Prabhupada and all the wonderful stories we all, came so far. My quick question, how did you all come to Alachua? Because it's been a great blessing for us also. So just curious, how you all ended up in Alachua and not other places.
You want to start?
Okay. Alachua because my husband was in charge of the Prabhupada Centennial in what was it? In 90, starting in 94. It was actually in 96, right?
When we celebrated.
Yeah, when we celebrated, but it took a lot of coordination. He was in charge of North America for helping all the temples coordinate their celebrations. So we were in Dallas, but we came here because there's a lot of devotees who could help us with that endeavor. There's a lot of people who could take up different services. And so from this little tiny insignificant space, as Prabhupada called Gainesville, insignificant or even more, we passed out 1,008 waters to all the temples so they could bathe Prabhupada in that water on his Vyas Puja and so many other celebrations, World Holy Name Day and World Prasadam Day, and all that was coordinated in North America from here. So we came here for the help the other devotees gave us here.
Yeah, and I actually, like my husband Pushkar, who's an artist, he did not want to move because Hawaii is kind of, paradise, especially for an artist. So much beauty, and we'd been there for a long time. But I just moved because I thought it wasn't a good place for my son. I wanted him to have association of devotees because Prabhupada always says that, and that's how Alachua grew. Once they did a survey like, why are all of these people moving to Alachua? Like, what's the attraction? The number one reason was the schools, because people wanted their children to be in association of devotees.
Yeah, when we came here in 1994, there were 40 devotees. How many? You came before us.
Yeah, I came in '89,
Like 12.
and it wasn't
We didn't
just.
have a place to stay then. This property wasn't
No.
involved then.
I stayed with Brahma Church and Bhakti at first, and then I moved to Alachua Villas,
Really?
and then Pushkar came to Alachua Villas reluctantly.
Yeah, definitely.
But he came. And the second most popular reason for moving here is I don't know what the price is now of land. It's gone up, but that it's more affordable. Like when you lived in Hawaii, there's no chance, unless you're a multimillionaire, really, of owning land and owning a house. You know, people who own their house, they have to go back to work, retirement, just to pay the taxes. The taxes are so high. So, yeah, I moved just for my son, you know, that he would be able to have association of devotees. And it is wonderful. It's big, though. I mean, it's so big that, you know, bigness comes with its own kind of problems, you know, different kinds of problems. Like,
yeah, there's about 1,200 devotees here currently.
Yeah, it's nice that wherever you go, you see devotees, you know, post office, supermarket, you know, everywhere you go.
They're working.
You can't get away with Maya because there's somebody who's going to see you.
But also, like, you know, the other temples I lived at, Miami and Hawaii, if you had an event, you would just invite all the devotees to come.
Yeah.
But you can't do that here. So I actually hardly ever have an event because I'm always afraid, like, I'm going to offend somebody by not being able to invite them, you know. But anyway, it's wonderful having so many devotees, you know, serving, and we have such beautiful deities. And
so many devotees serving the deities.
Yes.
Who has that many? 60, 70 devotees.
Any other questions?
Very cool. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, back to you, Vilas Prabhuji.
Vilas Prabhu dropped off. There's one Elisha Israni. Mataji, you want to go ahead?
Kṛṣṇa Mataji, I just wanted to say thank you for this wonderful class. And I was just looking at both of you, and you both look so effulgent and so radiant. So it just makes me feel that you both are already in the spiritual world. Thank you. It was great to attend this session.
Thank you for your spiritual vision.
It's just the background lighting.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's when you stay around devotees and you chant Hare Krishna every day, you know, like they say every 7 years, every cell in your body changes. So we used to always talk about that.
Yeah, we used to kind of,
in 7 years, I have a spiritual body now because I've been eating nothing but prasad for 7 years, you know. So it's a process. And somebody was just told me this story. I forget who this was. That sometimes it's hard to tell you're making advancement. You know, it's like but then they gave the example, like if you're in a jet, you know, like you don't really feel like you're moving. You know what I mean? Like you're in the jet, you're sitting in the airplane, and all of a sudden you're at your destination. So they were making that analogy to ourselves. You know, we're devotees, and you know, every day we're chanting. We may think, well, not that much is happening. I'm not, but all of a sudden, you know, that we just remembering Kṛṣṇa more, and you know, Maya starts taking more of a back seat. We're not so attracted to it. So as long as we stay in the association of devotees, you know, we're guaranteed, like Prabhupada says in the verse, Tatenu Kampam Shikshimik Shamano, that the spiritual world is our rightful claim. As long as we come to Tikshasha Bharata, as long as we tolerate, right? Like we tolerate happiness, but how do you tolerate happiness? It's like we don't get carried away. If we get $1 million, we use it in Krishna service, we don't get carried away with Maya. So that's tolerating happiness, that we don't forget Krishna because everything's great. And of course, tolerating distress is trying to get through those difficult times. And how do we do that? You know, we stay, our shelter is our service. So we stay, you know, with our service, and we take shelter of devotees that we trust, that can help us, that can give us counsel. So we're all on the jet, just a matter of time before we get there.
Thank you. Alicia Mataji, where are you joining from? You want to share quickly?
I'm from London, Bhaktivedanta Manor Congregation.
Oh,
Nice.
thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Talk
Same.
about a big temple. You certainly can't invite everyone in the temple to your gatherings.
Yeah, I was looking at you and I just remembered Guru Charan Padma Mataji. You both kind of,
Oh, yeah, I've
looks
heard a lot about her. Yeah. She did a lot of book distribution, I think, in Chicago.
yeah.
And that's actually where I was trained to do big books within Chicago, for the very first time.
Mhm.
But I thought it was fun, I really, it was a very special time being able to do that, just like kind of run from person to person, giving out these nectar books.
Mm.
Thank you. One last question, and then we will stop for today. Is Bhaswati Mataji? Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Mataji and Prabhuji. Mataji, it's we are very blessed to have your association, Srila Prabhupada. So my question for all of you, like how you feel exactly when you are taking the initiation from Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada? How, exactly when you are taking the initiation, how do you feel that moment? Can you please explain?
I mean, yeah, you feel overwhelmed to be in the presence of a pure devotee because, he knows everything. It just so happened at that time, I was going through a very stressful time in my life. And that Prabhupada knows all of that, and to be able to be linked up with the pure devotee, like you feel like just finally it's happened. Like, who knows how many lifetimes that we have spent in this material world, Like Prabhupada says, there's 8,400,000 species of life, and we've been through those species many, many times. So to finally get that opportunity, it's like you're just so grateful, like the luckiest girl in the world, right, Ananta?
Yes, definitely.
Just feel like the luckiest person in the world, and just that you just want to be able to serve, and you want to be able to share it with other people. And sometimes, when you're feeling shy, we all have times where we're feeling shy. I noticed they've just prayed to Prabhupada, like, Prabhupada, I just really want to be able to share. And Kṛṣṇa will make some arrangement, like Vaisheshika always says, just have the books with you, like in your car, some in your purse, so that when the opportunity arises, you can give that book. You're able to give that book, or give a card, give an invitation to come to the temple. So yeah, Rami, how did you feel when you were initiated?
Oh, that was a little different. Prabhupada made me feel very much that initiation was his mercy on me, that I was not qualified. Even though I thought it was like academic, you study so many books and do all the things they ask, and now they automatically have to initiate you. And somehow or other, I became very overwhelmed with the feeling that no, it wasn't like that. It was simply Prabhupada reaching out to some fallen soul and giving him a chance to get on the path back to Godhead by his personal mercy and his connection to Kṛṣṇa. So that was my primary feeling, is the mercy of the pure devotee.
Yeah, and we're all linked up to the founder Acharya,
Yes,
you may not have
Prabhupada said, it's indicated that his relationship with all the devotees for the next 10,000 years will be there. Not like only his disciples, direct disciples, were the only ones that could connect with him. But he has a relationship going with everyone who comes in contact with ISKCON Hare Krishna movement. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji and Mataji. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
She is such a hardworking devotee,
Is she?
dedicated Bhagvata.
Pleased to meet all of you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would request everyone to please turn on their audios, on the microphones and the cameras.
Can I just give my pranam to Mother Sukhada and Mother Padmahasta?
Ananta.
Because every year I went to Alachua for Krishna's Janmashtami, and they just encouraged me to go front because I am so short. I'm 4'11" foot, so I cannot see anybody. So they always took me forward to see Lord Krishna. I am so glad I'm so blessed to have them today. I always think about them. I always remember their face all the time.
Can you show your face also so they can see you? A little down, yes.
Arundhati.
Thanks, so nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I missed this year.
I know, the pandemic, it's been hard.
Yes.
We're lucky because the temple's open.
Okay.
And there is kirtan. You know,
Okay.
they have X's where you can stand where it's 6 feet, social distancing. And then when the artik's done, you can drive out and they give you a plate of prasad. You roll down your window and they put it in your car.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you to His Grace Ramya Prabhu, Her Grace Ananta Mataji and Sukhada Mataji for this wonderful session, sharing your deep spiritual relationship with Srila Prabhupada and amazing stories, amazing journey and book distribution and so much. So we are so grateful to you, all three of you, and to all the Prabhupada's children, disciples, for setting such a great example and leading us in this path of bhakti. So we would express our gratitude by loudly chanting 3 times. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Haribol.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
So much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Which one? Oh, that one?
Prabhupada ki jai, His Grace Ramya Prabhu ki jai, Her Grace Ananta Mataji ki jai, Her Grace Sukhada Mataji ki jai, Samaved Gaur Bhaktavind ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you to all the devotees as well for joining. We will connect again tomorrow in the evening. So thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.